Sandy says read. Today we're going to do a random thing, as we often do here. Today's random thing is I'm going to read for you an old scene that gives an example of a whole lot of switching point of view in a scene. Then I'm going to read for you an improved and edited version of that scene that shows a touch of switching point of view, where the switching is broadcast to the reader and is just done a little bit better, okay? And here's some talk about that. Let's do a little bit of intro before we jump into reading these two scenes, okay? I have, over the years, taken a lot of writing classes. Most recently, I've taken a class with Michael Nost about deep point of view. And in that class, he explained to us that if you, as a writer, want to break a rule, first you should know what the rule is, and then you should have a really good reason for breaking it. And now I'm paraphrasing what he said, okay? But he explained to us, look, if you want to break a rule, go for it. Do it. But know what the rule is. Understand the rule. Know why the rule exists, right? And then know why you want to break it. Have a good reason behind breaking a rule. And the rule I'm talking about today in this episode of Sandy Says Read, the rule we're talking about today is the rule of staying in one character's point of view in a chapter or in a scene. I'm telling you guys, and I admit this freely, I used to be terrible about jumping points of view. And there are folks out there in the industry who call that head hopping. And I don't like that term. That term feels slang to me. I don't like to say head hopping. It feels like a, you know how some reviewers will use terms and words that they just like heard in passing, and I don't like the term head hopping. Let's just leave it at that. I like to use the more sophisticated term of point of view. I don't like, I no longer like switching points of view in a scene unless I need to, but I will do it. I will do it because I'm the author. I am the omniscient narrator. When I write a book, I write from the omniscient third person point of view. And that's what you're going to get when you get a Sandy Linder book. That's how it is. That's how I write. That's how I grew up reading books in that perspective, in that point of view. And that's who I am. I am the third person omniscient narrator when I write a book. I go into the character's head. I give you that character's point of view for a scene, for a chapter. You get that. You get deep point of view from each of the characters as they are growing, as they're going through their arcs. But sometimes I need to break that rule. Sometimes I need you to see both of these characters reacting to things. Sometimes I need you to see two characters feeling the stuff. Sometimes I need you to have that emotion from both of them or from three of them. But I don't want you to be confused. So I broadcast whose head you're in. I broadcast who has the camera and who's showing you what's going on. I've learned to broadcast that. I've learned how to show you which head we're in. I've learned how to do that over the years. Oh, I used to be terrible at it. I used to not broadcast very well. I used to jump from point of view. I used to move that camera, way too much. I used to be just terrible at it. Terrible. I admit this openly. I used to be bad at it. Okay, I want to read, having said all that, I want to read for you a scene that had a lot of switching of points of view. It was a dinner scene in the first book I ever wrote, the first book that ever got published, the first book, Choices Meant for Gods, published in 2007. Yes, an editor went through it. Yes, there were fixes and changes and stuff, but that scene, that dinner scene, had so many characters and so many of them were reacting that didn't really need to be reacting. So over the years, I did fix that scene, and it has been improved. Beta readers helped me, other editors helped me, critique partners helped me, and I did fix and massage and change that scene so that now it's not in like 15 different points of view. That scene has been fixed, so when Choices Meant for Gods, the first book, was re-released by a new publisher in 2023, back in June, the scene is fixed. The scene is so much better. Am I saying it's perfect? No, but it's so much better. So let's dive in. Let's read the old scene the way it originally was published. You are welcome to cringe throughout this scene, okay? You're going to be lost. I'm just telling you right now, because you're not seeing it on the page. You're not able to back up and fix and reread and whatnot. You're going to be lost a little bit. I apologize. Here we go. This is the old scene with all my bad habits, okay? This is switching points of view way too much. From chapter 9 of the original Choices Meant for Gods. Trasson looked at her in amazement. This girl wasn't tired. She looked ready to start a new day of exercises. Don't you look all better, Mia teased. That was certainly fast. She looked to the doorway as if expecting to see another person enter. I don't know what it is, Chariss said, leaning over to kiss the top of Trasson's head. I just feel completely renewed. She plopped down on the bench to the right of her teacher to see the shining smile of Cora across the table from her. Well, dear, you look renewed. It's about time the sluggishness of your ordeal wore off. I think she looks beautiful, Kaelin murmured, blushing at the wink she got from Trasson. I think so too, he whispered back. I can't explain it, Chariss continued. Just a few minutes ago, I was so tired I could hardly move. Now I'm starving. Well, there's plenty to eat. This came from Jake, who sat to the other side of Kaelin. He was seeing a whole new person in Chariss. Her eyes looked a brighter violet, deeper purple than before. Her countenance was lifted, and she smiled a full, toothy smile that he found himself pleased to return. Kaelin was right. Chariss looked beautiful tonight. There's more talking than eating going on here, Godric stated from his position at the head of the table, but no one seemed to notice. Did you train all day today? Kaelin asked. It certainly feels like it. Chariss, Mia interrupted. Wasn't anyone coming with you to dinner? No. Oh, do you mean the test you conjured up for me? That silly little man won't be joining us for dinner. The color left Mia's face. Have the bread. Cora handed her a plate. What do you mean? Mia asked. Here's the butter, Latha said, leaning over the table with a small dish. Oh, thank you. And yes, Kaelin, it was a long day. Hopefully they'll give me time off for you tomorrow, as Mia promised. Chariss, tell me what you mean, Mia repeated. At this point, Trasson let the chatter around him dissolve into the background as he focused on Mia. The lesser goddess was troubled, and he touched Chariss's arm to get her attention. Yes, old man. Answer Mia. Then Chariss turned her head to face the lesser goddess and saw a gentleman at the foot of the table. He watched her with an amused smile and gave a nod of acknowledgement when their eyes met. What is it, Mia? Please tell me what you meant by the silly man not joining us. Well, Mia, don't be concerned. I merely dealt with him and came to dinner alone. Mia's jaw dropped, and now the other members of the family started to take interest in their conversation. Dealt with him? Well, he appeared out of some sort of beam of light, stood there like a statue, and refused to raise his sword when I challenged him. Chariss spoke nonchalantly, watching her hands butter the bread. He seemed to just want to talk, or throw me off guard or something, so I decided I was too hungry to stand around chatting with monsters, no matter how handsome they were, and I sent him back along the spell that brought him in. She set her knife on her plate and gave Mia a mischievous wink. Lowering the pitch of her voice slightly, as if this was the best part of all, she finished, but I sent him back at half the speed. Mia sat back in her chair flabbergasted. Cora and her children laughed at the fun little ending to her story, but Trasson continued to take his cue from Mia. Are you sure that was wise? Aye, the masters save us all, Mia said. Wise? He was just some conjured image sent to delay my dinner. I'll tell you what's about to be delayed, a voice announced. Now it was Chariss's turn to be flabbergasted. Because she faced the doorway, she could see a man who had entered the room, and the man who appeared in the training arena a few moments before. She leapt from her seat, sword unsheathed, and barked a command before anyone else could react. Your test is with me. Leave these people alone. She had begun to circle the end of the table to engage him where he stood, but stopped abruptly at the family's responses. Father, Cora shouted. Ah, Master, I'm so glad you're here. Why didn't you tell us you were coming, Grandfather? The gentleman at the foot of the table looked up at Chariss to see the color drain from her face. I suggest a quick apology to begin with. She looked down at him, gauging whether he was serious. Did he really think an apology would save her? Judging from the family's salutations, here stood the Master Rothan himself. She had insulted her god. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay. She was doomed and sank to her knees in both respect and fear. That's not going to do it, the gentleman chuckled. Cora and the children continued their excited greetings, and the master let himself get caught up in their affections. It was pleasant to have his It was pleasant to have his mortal family love on him and ask the silly questions children ask. Chariss, on the other hand, was in misery. The gentleman at the foot of the table leaned over to speak to her again. Would you like to sit up here by me? I can offer you some semblance of protection. His eyes were a serious brown, dark as liquid fudge made in the Javaran kingdom to the north, but they betrayed an amusement at the situation in the way they sparkled. She found the levity with which he viewed her predicament disconcerting. Didn't he realize she was in mortal danger? Or should she take his lack of concern as a sign that the being wouldn't strike her dead on the spot? Because she didn't know the man watching her with his serious brown eyes, she didn't know what to think. She was nearly in tears, and Rasson was beside himself with worry. Because the family had the master distracted, he let himself think his girl might get out of this alive. Chariss, on the other hand, had no such hope. She looked up at the gentleman, who seemed to enjoy taunting her, and her violet eyes sent a pang of remorse through him. Okay, I'm going to stop there because, that last paragraph itself, we were in 3 different heads in that last paragraph. 3 different point of views in one paragraph. Yeah. So you can see I used to do the changing point of view a lot. Not every scene in the book switched points of view that often, that frequently. It wasn't that bad. That scene is an extreme. That scene had a lot of characters in it. That scene did not need to jump points of view as often as it did. I didn't need Jake Timon to have a point of view in that scene. I did not need him thinking anything about anybody. Jake is just there. But he needs to be there because he's one of the kids. He would be eating dinner with the family, right? So he needs to be there. But he doesn't need to be thinking stuff. And I certainly don't need the reader seeing what he's thinking, right? There's just too much clutter, too much jumping, it's too much. So there's a lot of it that needed to be fixed up. Now, I highly recommend critique partners. I highly recommend beta readers assisting with this kind of stuff. Like when you're ready for a content edit, a beta reader is fabulous for that kind of thing. And critique partners as well, right? But, keep in mind, critique partners are not like professionals in the industry, right? I had a critique partner tell me that scene should be from Jake's point of view. I'm like, Jake, that's interesting. And so I thought about it for a minute, like, why would a critique partner think Jake is important enough for that scene to be in his point of view? And so, I stopped and thought about, okay, why would Jake need to be the one seeing all of that and feeling anything in there? And I could not come up with a reason, but it made me stop and think about it for a while, right? So that was interesting. The point of view that you're writing from should be a character who is invested in the scene, should be a character who has skin in the game, right? That your reader, you guys out there, you want to feel what the important character is feeling, right? So I need Chariss to be feeling something in this scene, right? I need Nigel to be feeling something in this scene. Those two are meeting for the first time in chapter 9, and those two are going to have a slow burn romance underneath all the action and all the good versus evil and all the intricate plots and Machiavellian crap that happens in this series. Those two are going to be like a steadfast pillar underneath everything else that's happening in this series. So I need those two to feel and understand what's going on in this scene. So I rewrote it. I completely rewrote the scene. I revamped it. I had help. I had help to redo this thing. I do start in Rasson's point of view, though, because Rasson is Chariss's mentor, wizard guardian. He's been her stalwart companion since she was 4 winters old. So we start with Rasson, and this is the rewrite of the scene. Rasson looked at his ward in amazement. Her lavender eyes shone, and the gem on her cheekbone caught the light from one of the many sconces in the room, refracting tiny prisms of color. The girl he and Mia had left in the training arena was no longer tired. The aura of lavender and heather wildflowers that she breezed into the room suggested she was ready to start a new day of exercises. "Don't you look all better?" Mia teased. "That was certainly fast." Rasson noticed the lesser goddess look to the doorway, as if she expected someone else to accompany Chariss. Now see, right there, in the last scene, it felt like we jumped into Mia's head to look at the doorway and expect to see someone there. In this case, we've got Rasson. He's just noticing Mia look over. Okay, he's seeing her look over. And you can have a character notice other characters doing things without jumping heads, without jumping point of view, without moving the camera. He's just seeing it. Okay, there's a difference. All right, so Rasson is noticing that Mia looks over. All right, "I don't know what it is," Chariss said, leaning over to kiss the top of his head. "I feel completely renewed." She plopped down on the bench to his right and returned the shining smile of Cora across the table from them. "Well, you look renewed," Cora said. "It's about time the sluggishness of your ordeal wore off." "I think she looks beautiful," Kaylin murmured. Rasson winked at the child, causing young Kaylin to blush, and whispered, "I think so too." He already spooned a small pile of steaming peas onto Chariss's plate next to his, as his ward began her explanation. "I don't understand it. Just a few minutes ago, I was so tired I could hardly move. One quick interaction with a test figure, and I'm starving." "Well, there's plenty to eat." This came from Jake, who sat to the other side of Kaylin. Rasson noted the lad returned a full, toothy smile to his ward. "There's more talking than eating going on around here," Godric stated from his position at the head of the table, but no one seemed to notice him. "Did you train all day today?" Kaylin asked. "It certainly feels like it," Chariss answered. "Chariss," Mia interrupted, "wasn't anyone coming with you to dinner?" "No. Do you mean the test you conjured up for me? That silly little man won't be joining us for dinner." The color drained from Mia's face. "Have the bread." Cora handed Chariss a small basket. "What do you mean?" Mia asked. "Here's the butter," Latha said, leaning over the table with a small dish. "Thank you," Chariss said. "And yes, Kaylin, it was a long day. Hopefully they'll give me time off for you tomorrow, as Mia promised." "Chariss, tell me what you mean," Mia repeated. At this point, Rasson let the chatter, the utensils clatter, and the sense of roasted foods around him dissolve into the background as he focused on Mia. The lesser goddess was troubled, and he set aside the fork he had used to place a slab of roast pork on Chariss's plate to touch his ward's arm, garnering her attention. "Yes, old man?" "Answer Mia," he instructed, tilting his head toward the woman near the foot of the table, as if Chariss would have misplaced her. Now, we're going to move into Chariss's point of view. We're going to switch, but I'm going to broadcast that's happening. But we've got to move. I mean, we've got to get out of Rasson's point of view. We've got to move into Chariss and Nigel. Okay. Then Chariss turned to face the lesser goddess and noticed a gentleman had joined them tonight. He had taken the normally vacant place at the foot of the table. The man watched her with a blithe smile and offered a nod of acknowledgement as her eyes swept past him. While the tug of his amusement almost enchanted her to linger with his gaze, she obeyed Rasson's wish and asked of Mia, "What's wrong?" "Tell me what you meant by the silly man not joining us." "Why, don't be concerned. I merely dealt with him and came to dinner alone." Chariss tossed a pea from her plate into her mouth, letting one portion of her brain marvel at the sweetness of such a small, crunchy vegetable while she watched the lesser goddess. Mia's jaw dropped, and now the other members of the family took a deeper interest in their conversation. "Dealt with him?" Mia asked. "Well, he appeared out of some sort of beam of light, stood there like a statue, and refused to raise his sword when I challenged him." Chariss buttered her bread as she spoke nonchalantly. "He seemed to just want to talk or throw me off guard or something, so I decided I was too hungry to stand around chatting with monsters, no matter how handsome they might be, and I sent him back along the path of the spell that brought him in." She set her butter knife on her plate and gave Mia a mischievous wink. Lowering the pitch of her voice slightly, as if this was the best part of all, she finished, "But I sent him back at half the speed." She bit into her bread, the cool butter satisfying her taste buds with its hint of saltiness around the yeast and flour base. Mia sat back on the bench flabbergasted. Cora and her children laughed at the fun little ending to her story, but Rasson continued to take his cue from Mia. "Are you sure that was wise?" "Aye, the master save us all," Mia said. "Wise?" Chariss quickly half-chewed the bread in her mouth and swallowed it down to say, "He was just some conjured image sent to delay my dinner." "I'll tell you what's about to be delayed," a voice announced. Now it was Chariss's turn to be flabbergasted. Because she faced the doorway, she could see the man who had entered the room, the same man who had appeared in the training arena to test her. She leapt from her seat, lyric unsheathed, and barked a command before anyone else could react. "Your test is with me. Leave these people alone." She had begun to circle the end of the table to engage him where he stood, but stopped abruptly at the family's reactions. "Father!" Cora shouted. "Oh, Master, I'm so glad you're here," someone said. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming, Grandfather?" one of the children asked. The gentleman at the foot of the table turned his dark eyes to Chariss. "I suggest a quick apology to begin with," he said. She looked down at him, gauging whether he was serious. Does he think an apology will save me? Judging from the family's salutations, the Master Rothan himself stood before them. She had insulted her god. She was doomed, and sank to her knees in both respect and fear. "That's not going to solve it," the gentleman chuckled. Cora and the children continued their excited greetings, and the Master let himself get caught up in their affections. He apparently enjoyed having his mortal family love on him and ask the silly questions children ask. Chariss, on the other hand, wallowed in misery. The gentleman at the foot of the table leaned over to speak to her again. "Would you like to sit up here by me? I can offer you some semblance of protection." His eyes were a serious brown, dark as the liquid fudge made in the Javaran kingdom to the north, but they betrayed an amusement at her situation. The levity with which he viewed her predicament disconcerted her. Doesn't he realize I'm in mortal danger? Or should she take his lack of distress as a sign that the being among them wouldn't strike her dead when no longer distracted by family? Because she didn't know the man assessing her, she didn't know what to think. She looked up at the gentleman who seemed to enjoy taunting her, and her violet eyes sent a pang of remorse through him. "Whoa, Amanda Chariss, he's not going to kill you. Come on." He reached over with both hands and gripped her by the shoulders. Raising her up, he helped her onto the seat nearest him. "Now just relax a minute," he said. His voice took on a sincere, gentle tenor, no longer teasing her. "He's probably going to yell at you in front of everyone to make himself feel justified or something. Then he'll sit down to eat, and everything will be fine." She groaned at the thought of eating with the Master Rothan, especially after insulting him and flinging him back to Marraket. "You're not going to cry, are you?" the gentleman asked. "I don't think so." He liked the way her lashes accented the forlorn look in her eyes. It gave him the impression he rescued a damsel in distress. "Good," he said. "There's no need to. I'm Nigel, by the way." He held out his hand to shake hers, as if they were trading horses at the livery in Arcana City, but she stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Nigel? He's the family's oldest son. But this man looked nothing like his younger siblings. He possessed Godric's darkness, the almost black hair, the Arcanan brown eyes that a moment ago had seemed mocking. Nigel may have lacked his mother's effeminate features that his siblings shared, but the features he had inherited from his father had been improved upon immeasurably. His cheekbones were higher, giving his face a more natural shape than Godric's, and his chin was a bit more squared than the point she imagined Godric had under his ridiculous beard. While Nigel carried the familiar, warm honey scent of the estate that his siblings did, he also had an air of fresh summer wheat about him, as if he spent more time outdoors than in. He flashed her a smile as he withdrew his hand. "You're about to faint, aren't you? I wouldn't advise it, because I don't think it would help. He's got to have his tantrum, and then it'll all blow over." His language concerning the Master shocked her. "You speak so irreverently," she practically whispered. "And I suppose you were perfectly penitent when you sent him back to Marraket?" He paused a beat. "At half the speed?" Okay, so that's the dinner scene where Nigel and Chariss meet, and that's the improved version that's in the 2023 edition of Choices Meant for Gods. We still have some shifting point of view, because we need it. We need Nigel and Chariss. We need both of their reactions. We need both of them to respond to one another. We need to see them seeing one another. And so we do. But I make it clear who we're seeing from. There you go. Okay, so as Michael Nost taught us in the Deep Point of View class, know what the rule is, know why it exists, to keep from confusing readers, right? Know the rule, know why it exists, and know why you're going to break it if you're going to break it. Just be careful when you're breaking rules. There you go. That's Sandy Lender's deep point of view rule breaking lesson for today. Ha! Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Thumbs up for breaking rules, and please click the bell notification icon so you're notified each time I do the random crazy things here on the channel. I appreciate you guys being subscribers. I appreciate you listening to this rambling. Thanks so much for tuning in.